The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it, Wednesdays here, midweek edition. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency for all your equipment financing needs. Go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Hope you're doing all right. Plenty of time for you today to get into the stream or chat. Numbers to dial up, 489-1240, 489-1240. Across the state where you hear us, 1-800-825-5865. Watch the show, the Hail Varsity YouTube channel, the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed at HVarsity Radio. Easy to do. Marcus Satterfield just spoke probably about 15 to 20 minutes ago. Some reaction and some comments from Satterfield. We'll try and get that turned around for you. What does Nebraska do at quarterback Saturday? Well, stay tuned. I know you have a thought. I know you have a thought out there based on turnovers and performance, but the reality is Jeff Sims is going to practice tonight. Sims will practice tonight. How does he look in said practice is going to do a lot for what Nebraska decides at quarterback. That is fine. That is absolutely fine with me. And we'll see. We'll see what Sims's ankle is like. Can email the show, chris@hailvarsity.com. Find Elijah on Twitter at Herbalessence. Find me, Chris Schmidt, at Schmidt_radio. Mike Babcock, Mr. Husker Football, going to be with us in about 20 minutes. Evan Bland in hour 2, and a Jock Doc on one and only Aaron Rodgers. So we dive in. Quick note before we dive into football and Satterfield. You did it last night watching ESPN. You stood up and applauded champions. You applauded Nebraska volleyball. You applauded John Cook. You applauded what was a long time in coming of that dish served cold. Little revenge. And Stanford and their artwork, if you remember, about the whiteboard. And you had a butt whooping last night as Husker Volleyball tweeted out timber. You got that axe going. You chopped that tree down. You won 3-1. And you had a bunch of freshmen that are out of this world talented, thrive in a moment that only Nebraska volleyball can do. You want to talk big stage, big moment, right? We've hit on that for Nebraska football as 8 million plus saw Nebraska, Colorado last Saturday. Well, according to social media, you had 466,000 tune into Husker volleyball last night v. Stanford. That beat the Yankees-Red Sox game by about 40,000.
Well, who the hell wants to watch the Yankees this year?
Junior. But no, I mean,
but more people want to watch a winning product. It's as simple as that.
You do. You want to watch a winner. And you saw 2 historic volleyball programs. You saw 2 teams that'll fight their way to the Final Four yet again. You saw a team that went down and swept Texas, which is one moment in time you can be a Stanford volleyball fan. And then Nebraska just handed it to them. It was incredible. And, you know, you're not surprised because of the excellence that is developed, that is recruited, that is coached, and then that is on display for Husker volleyball. So we're going to take a minute to start off with the champions and a team that's got a real threat to make another run despite their age, despite their inexperience. Cook just finds studs to get out there, rotate in, and you're led by Lexi, and he was awesome. I don't know volleyball. Jacob Badilla knows volleyball. He was on with Damon this morning and killed it as always. And we'll talk to Jacob later this week if we can. But just watching it and just smiling about it as a Nebraska fan, you can take your and put your fan hat on, guys and gals, and go, that's just an elite product right there. And what a cool moment for Nebraska to go out there and just own it and just deliver. It's really cool. You're waiting for that to happen in football.
Well, it's John Cook and the championship mentality that he has in building that program. There are great players that have played a lot of volleyball for Nebraska over the past couple of years that are barely getting on the court anymore. And it's because John Cook has said, you know what? I'm going to bring in the best
talent. You want to win your job? You want to keep your job? You better win the job.
Dare I say, John Cook is bringing in the Louis. I'm not going to go to Prime 1 week.
No.
I'm sorry. But he
is bringing Louis quality.
Yes, and it doesn't matter how much you've played for that Husker Volleyball program. It's John Cook saying, I don't care how much you've played for me. I'm going to put the best players on the floor. And damn, Harper Murray?
Yes.
A freshman? You could argue was the best player on the court last night.
Big time. And like, you know, when
you have All-Americans on that floor, you have people who have been playing in Final Fours, and Harper Murray, the true freshman, might be the best one out there. Well, she's incredible.
I loved watching Alec patrol the net.
She's fantastic. And
she's
the fire
incredible.
She brings.
Big time. I love her personality. But when you talk about Harper, I mean, my God, the footwork, the side-to-side agility.
Just the power. The power, man.
It brought back horrific memories of mine when one of us in the room's trying to make the Southeast baseball team and they're making you go side to side like you're a middle infielder. Right? And that didn't work out for me ever, and it didn't deserve to work out for me ever. I was never going to make that baseball team, but I tried. The old track around Prosh Activity Center with the off-season running.
Yeah.
Some of us had friends out on the hill back in the day, so I blamed the second hand. All right? So the off-season running program was no good, and then they see the lack of agility and side-to-side movement to play. Your arms suck, son, but we're going to try and put you at second so it's an easier throw.
So now you're up on the track. I did some of those baseball workouts back in high school around the track where it's like the shuffle into the full sprint, into the stop.
No good.
Yeah,
no good.
It wasn't good for me when I was fat either.
Right. Well, but at least it helped me. At least you were heavy.
I got better. But no, that Husker volleyball team, that match last night.
The side-to-side, the lateral quickness is where we got to get back on the tracks.
Yeah, and Harper Murray is fantastic there, but just my main takeaway from last night is I knew this Husker volleyball team was good this year. Holy cow, last night raised the ceiling in terms of my expectations for what this team can be this year, because you saw all the freshmen, you kind of wondered, is this going to be a year where they're getting their feet wet and it's a Final Four and you're going to be happy with that? But last night showed me this team's goal, just from the outside looking in, how they treated that match last night. This team wants a national championship.
Well, it's a mentality.
It is.
You've got the ability, but to harness that ability and have the mentality at this age is great. Brian chimes in. To have 4 freshmen in your main 8 rotation and to see their ability was pretty amazing. Cook wants another natty. Just lay it out there. He always wants a natty, but he's got a team to do it. So,
and dare I say, I hate to go here because it's way premature, but following Volleyball Day in Nebraska, with the talent he has, if it is a national championship this year or next year, does John Cook think about going out on top? Because you would be laying whoever you're handing the program off to, they'd be in good hands with the amount of young talent that this team has. That's also another place in my mind. I know it's way premature to say that. I'm not saying that I have any inside information or whatnot. You just think about
he wants 1 or 2 more before he goes off to feed his cattle.
But you also know it's important to him to make sure the volleyball program's in the right hands whenever he moves on.
Sure.
And I think you have a freshman group right now that by the time they're juniors or seniors, you'd feel good handing off to the next incumbent and say, hey, I'm going to leave you talent. You're going to be great. You're going to be a national championship contender next year with the talent I have left you, and that's going to allow you to continue off where I have left off in the recruiting process. You wonder about that if John Cook has some of that in the back of his mind now with this young talent that he's got. But it's premature to be saying all that. All I know is this Husker volleyball team is a bunch of killers, and I think there's only a handful of teams in the country that can come close to what this Husker volleyball program is when they're firing on all cylinders as they were in the first 2 sets last night.
I'll say this. You have a different situation when you hand off, you were to hand off championship level teams. And you've seen it be seamless because of the talent makeup and then just the team having ownership. It's player-led. You hear coaches talk about that all the time. You've seen it in football, 2 instances, Dennis Erickson, Larry Coker at Miami. You go from Jimmy Johnson to Switzer in the NFL. Barry always jokes about, well, hell, you could have got somebody off the street to coach that team. It was my job not to screw it up. In Nebraska's case, his assistants are elite. They're really talented as well, and we'll see. Let's see if Nebraska can get it done. But so far, so good for Nebraska volleyball. Husker football on our mind. We'll get there now. And Mike Babcock in about 10 minutes. So the quarterback situation isn't clearer, but at least you kind of know what Nebraska's thinking. And we'll hear from Coach Satterfield here in 2 seconds on the quarterback situation. But what is real is kind of a TBD, to be determined. What does Sims do tonight? How does he look? How does he feel? His health is prominent, most important. I know there's a loud clamoring for Harburg. I know there's some thought on Chubba Pretty. And I don't think it's really that big a question. Who do you go with if Sims can't go? And I think you go with Harburg. I think you go with Harburg because I think you can design a passing game well enough to suit his abilities throwing it. But I think you're going to win football games moving forward with quarterback run, with a 1-2 punch behind this offensive line with quarterback and I-back run, with zone read, with some option, with some designed quarterback usage. So here is the response, because immediately when Satterfield went to the podium, he was asked about Sims and the quarterback situation.
We held him out on yesterday's practice. Just he got mental reps and followed around the huddle and everything. Expecting him to be out there tonight and go as full speed as he possibly can.
Yeah, so he's not a guy that went much this week. He is trying to go tonight. Cutter chimes in on what you do at quarterback if you're Nebraska. Cutter's take, and you can watch the show here, Hail Varsity YouTube channel. I think it's a terrible idea to have Sims play Saturday. If he fumbles or throws the pick, the stadium will not hold back with their boos. Don't know if you can come back from boos and then cheers for your backup. The not everybody at Memorial Stadium Saturday night is going to unload on a quarterback if he makes a mistake. Or a couple of mistakes. Because guess what? All three quarterbacks in this equation could make a mistake or two or three. It would be Harburg's first start. Purdy's been turnover prone. And then Sims has got his history through 2 games in the rule era. Yeah, you're restless because you're not wrong in the instance of what's kept this football program from being 1-1 or better. Hasn't been the defense. Hasn't necessarily been the special teams, and it's not necessarily even been the running game. It's just been management. It's been fundamentals. It's been taking care of the football. And I think you're going to see some Anthony Grant on Saturday night. I hope you see Sims. I would like to see more Harburg, but I think it's only fair. I'm not trying to talk out of both sides of my mouth. I don't think you can walk away from a kid after 2 games. I think in game, if he's healthy and he goes, because he's going to try like heck to go. If he makes a mistake, you got to coach him through it, and I appreciate this staff to do that, because I think if he eventually settles down, and I'm not sure he'll change what he is. He may just be turnover prone, despite the athleticism. I think if you can fix it and fix him, I think you've got a weapon that's got an arm and got some ability, got some toughness. You've got likability. I mean, guys want to play with him on this football team. I don't think it's fair to Harburg to just keep him or Pretty off to the side and, well, you just got to live with the turnovers. No, at some point, for the betterment of the team, you got to make a change, but I don't think you give up on your starter, the guy who won the job this soon. So I hope he's healthy because I want to see him play, and I want to see if he can play and get in a rhythm and get comfortable and, God forbid, have a turnover-free football game.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the key for Sims. I do think, as it stands today, we've learned that Sims is going to hope to go. I think we're moving towards Sims being your starter on Saturday. On one hand, if it is Harburg that trots out there first on Saturday night, I'm not going to say that's the wrong decision.
That'll be cool.
I I would agree with the decision. I'd say, hey, you know what? Based on what you saw in the first 2 games and what you saw at Georgia Tech, Sims has shown you what he is. But on the other hand, it's a guy learning a new offense. And if you do throw the Georgia Tech, not to the side, but if you keep it in the back of your mind more than forefront, you can look at the games and say, hey, you have played 2 Power 5 opponents who, not many quarterbacks, their first 2 games in new system are going to be against Power 5 opponents. Both of those games, at least according to Vegas, you weren't the favored team. And yeah, he had some issues, but I think if Sims is the guy, I can sit there and I can understand a decision to say you have your opportunity against a team that you should beat, that you shouldn't be having any errors against in Northern Illinois. If you can go have a mistake-free game against Northern Illinois, you earn the right to go play against Louisiana Tech. If you don't, we're going to go to Harburg. Sure. I think it's as simple as that. By the time you get to these 2 games, these tune-up games, it's just what they are. It's a chance to tune up. You've learned your lessons from the first 2. Now you get to go implement them on the field. If you haven't learned your lessons from those first 2, if you're still making the same mistakes, I think that's, from a coaching perspective, an understandable reason to say, you know what, we're going to give you the chance now, but if you can't do anything with that second chance we've now given you, it's time to move on.
You can't leave him out to dry, and you can't leave the rest of the team out to dry and put a win in jeopardy. If he is, in his decision-making and management, keeping this thing close, got to make a change. But you shouldn't lose your starting job due to injury either. So we'll see where they go. We'll see how he practices tonight. Mike Babcock next.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for spending time. It's Hail Varsity Radio with you on a Wednesday, presented by Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. We welcome in Mr. Husker Football, Mike Babcock, with us at MD Babs on Twitter with Hail Varsity. Babbers, how we doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm taking notes as always. I agree with everything you guys have said, even when it's contradictory. It's like,
talk to me about the contradiction, because part of me wants to see Harburg go, because I think he may be a little bit better manager, better decision maker, even though I have no proof of that. Part of me wants to see Sims get another crack because of the upside, but can you be better? And all of this is still a question mark, because can Sims go and be healthy enough to be effective on Saturday night? And we'll know more about that tomorrow from Coach Rule, because they're practicing tonight.
Yeah, well, I think the health is the question, because on Monday, Matt Rule said that Sims was the quarterback, the number 1 quarterback if he's healthy. That was kind of a Tom Osborne type thing. It was emphasized. If you're the starter, you don't lose your position because of an injury. Come back from injury, you're the starter until you lose that job. I like the observation. He starts against Northern Illinois. We see how he plays. Maybe he gets through it without mistakes and Nebraska wins as expected. Then he's the starter for Louisiana Tech, and you move forward.
Mike, what do you make of this, with where the program's at 0-2, and there's been so much shared blame? That's been a priority by Rule, by Satterfield today. Everyone's taken up saying, I could do my job better. It's not all on Sims. And I think that's admirable and probably true to some respect. But there's so much rallying around Sims, and just quite honestly how the offense hasn't performed, guys trying to be accountable. I think Babbers froze. Hello, Mike.
There he goes. Well, in the meantime, we do have some more audio from Marcus Satterfield we can play while we wait for Mike to rejoin us.
We'll see if Babbers rejoins. More from Coach Satterfield here.
Talks about the opportunity for Heinrich Harburg this week and moving forward.
It's an opportunity. We try to iron sharpen iron mentality all the time, through competition. So, they're preparing like they're going to be the starters, both of them, and they've had a good week so far.
So that's big for Nebraska to have guys geared up, get ready. That's what you'll want. There's not many programs that can go out, cover a number, win, air quote, easily with your second or third team quarterback. Nebraska has done it in the past with some of their greater teams. This is a chance for that emphasis on development to really shine and show through. Mike, great to have you back. We just heard a little bit from Satterfield on how the backups are gearing up and they're looking good.
Yeah, well, and here's the other thing, so you get to the Louisiana Tech game, and if you're going to have one of these backup, if Harburg, for example, is going to get an opportunity, you have to look at what happens after that. Michigan, you don't want to throw one of those guys in there against Michigan starter up to that point. So decision would have to be made, I think, after the Northern Illinois game, whoever starts the Louisiana Tech game is probably going to be the guy that you go with, at least for Michigan. You don't want to throw somebody in there and really ruin his confidence against a team like that. So I think it's an important game. The Northern Illinois game is an important game for the quarterback. And if Jeff Sims is healthy, hopefully he'll be the starter, and we'll see how he can do.
Now, Micah, another thing to discuss here is the impact of what Sims' injury could be on Saturday. Should he be, say, 90% with the ankle? Do you worry about taking away, as some people in our comments have said, taking away what the strength of his game is through that ankle and putting him in a tough spot? Because you talk about the confidence against Michigan. After guys already had 2 poor outings in his first 2 games as a Husker, if there are boos from the home fans, or if there are calls from the fans for Harburg to come into the football game, could that be something that forever shakes a guy's confidence? Do you hold him out even if he's close to being ready, or if you feel like he is ready, just to avoid potentially hurting his confidence even more than it could already be shaken?
No, I think if he's 100% healthy, you put him in there. If he's not 100%, then I think you're in the situation that you're talking about, and I don't think it's probably a good idea. If he's not 100%, I don't think you want to put him in there, because you don't want to aggravate that injury. And the thing that he does best is run the football, which we saw he can do pretty well. And you don't want to put him at risk in that sense. But I think if you feel like he's 100% healthy, I think you put him out there. I mean, it's a tough call, but you've got to, as best you can, block out the noise and go with the guy that you think is your best shot. And it seems as if up to this point, a healthy Sims is the guy that they believe is the number one guy, needs to be.
And I guess the concern for me, Mike, not really a question, more of just an observation. What I know about football players, especially ones who might be worried about the guy behind them coming and taking their job, even if they're not 100% ready, they're going to tell the coaching staff they're 100% ready, and they're going to want to go out in that football field, because even though the coaching staff, and you hear it from a lot of coaching staffs, say you're not going to lose your job because of injury, is it actually the case if a backup comes in and outperforms what you've seen from this starter? It's easy to say it. It's harder to do it. And what I know about football players, especially guys like Sims that are gamers, even if they're not 100%, they'll say they're 100%, and they'll tell the training staff, I'm ready to go. You better tell the coaching staff I'm ready to go, because I'm going to be out on that field on Saturday. That's where the concern comes from me, is a guy being overconfident in that moment and saying, you know what, I am ready to go. I'm going to tell the coaching staff I'm ready to go, and they'll take it personally if they're not out there.
Yeah, there's a possibility of that. I believe that. And here's the other thing I would say. In Northern Illinois, Huskers need to play well, but, I'm figuring that this is going to be a victory. I think you have to have a plan going into the game that if Sims starts, regardless, at some point, Harburg is going to go in there and get significant snaps. And maybe in the second half or in the fourth quarter, Purdy's going to go in there and get some significant snaps, because you want those guys to have that opportunity. And I'm going back to an Osborne thing here. That was what you tell me, what you're talking about here with the boos reminds me of the Central Florida game when Scott Frost was the quarterback. And Osborne had pre-planned to put Frankie London in for a series when it mattered, and I think in the second quarter. So Frost starts out. Second quarter, in comes Frankie London. He leads the Huskers down to a touchdown. And then, as was the plan, Frost comes back in. He gets booed. The fans boo because Frankie London took them down and they scored a touchdown. That's why I say you've got to be able to block out the noise, but you also have to go into this game, I think, with a plan that you're going to get your backup quarterback in there when it matters. Give him an opportunity, even if it's one series. And then as you get control of the game, hopefully, you get the second team guy in there, and then you move on, and at some point you get that third team guy in there and get him an opportunity. The same thing is going to happen in the Louisiana Tech game, the way I project it, but you never know. I mean, depends on how the game goes.
Mike Babcock's with us from Hail Varsity at MD Babs on Twitter. Babbers, what is the leash like on Sims? Say he's healed up, he's 100%, he's been cleared, he's ready to go, and there's still problems. Either it's the stage or the trying too hard or just a flat-out bad decision. When it comes down to fundamentals, taking care of the football, throwing a pick, fumbling, whatever the case may be. He stays what he's been through his career, and that's turnover-prone. How much more do you ride with him, Mike? And it goes back to what Rule said. Yeah, he's our guy, but he's got to take care of the football. What's the breaking point?
Right, and if it starts out quickly the same way that it has been with the mistakes, I think you take him out and you put Harburg in and you take Sims on the sideline and you say, just calm down, relax, think about it, readjust, whatever, adjust, and you go with Harburg, give him an opportunity. I mean, I think you have to do that at some point because, again, you've got to get prepared for the conference season and you got to know what you're going to be doing when conference time comes. And you've got, I think, again, I'm projecting, you've got 2 games here where you can make that decision. You can think about what you have.
Mike, about 90 seconds here. What are you encouraged about with this football team where they can maybe flip it as the season moves forward and still get to postseason?
I like the defense. And I like the fact that they're running multiple guys in there on defense. It's a really strong point when you get into Big Ten play if you can play defense the way Nebraska has. But the thing is, you have to help that defense a little bit by not turning the ball over, by punting the ball well and setting the opposing offense back so that they've got a ways to go. But that's the thing that has really been significant, I think, the defense. I thought it would be good, but I think it's really good. And I like the way they've got some young players that are filtering in there as well and making a difference, like Glenhart.
Mike, they do have young guys that are thriving right now in their roles that will look to expand. Mike, tell folks a little bit about the newsletter you're doing here, bud.
Well, I do a couple times a week. I do a newsletter and for Hurrdat Sports under Hail Varsity, and I really enjoy doing it. The first one is always history. The second one is related to the upcoming game. So it's an enjoyable thing that they allowed me to do.
And where can people find that?
I said pretty substantial things when I wasn't on the air here.
Well, I know you always.
It's the only things that I said that were good,
No, you're always good. We love you.
Well, quickly, Mike, 10 seconds. Where can people find that newsletter?
You just it comes to you free. I mean, if you email me, and I'll make sure that you get on the mailing list.
I love it. Mike, we'll talk Saturday, bud. Thanks for the time.
Thanks for having me, guys.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Good stuff from Mike Babcock. That email, again, you want the Mike Babcock newsletter, mikeb@hurrdatsports.com. I get it in my inbox. It's awesome. And Babber's Mr. Husker football. So we will check in and get to a lot of your stream comments. More of your emails, Chris@hailvarsity.com. Let's finish with Satterfield here. He talked a little bit about what determines Sims if he gets on the field. His health. He'll practice tonight. A little bit more, Elijah, with Sims and Satterfield. And there's a lot of apprehension, a lot of tension with Nebraska fans right now. Just in general with the OC and the play calling. The offense, I like that they are committed to the ground, and you're looking for a lot to be desired in the passing game, but I think it can be there. I think you've got a couple of tight ends you can try and wear defenses out with. I think you got a guy like Kemp that's got enough shake and bake. The over-the-top or take-the-top-off guy is still a freshman. You've got some options. But what can you do throwing the football, and can your offensive line play get better? Let's get to Satterfield here. You've heard about Sims. You've heard about Harburg. This was Satterfield being asked about Sims' struggles.
It's easy to say, well, just catch the snaps, but I think it goes back to what we talked about last week. Like, I've got to continue to do a better job coaching him. We have to catch the snaps. And what I mean by that is, like, we have to work during the week with more crowd noise. Like, I've got to do a better job of making sure that we're utilizing certain snap counts, with the motions and stuff that we use. I've got to be smart with the play types with the motions and stuff that we're using, especially down in the student section when it got really loud. I think, all that kind of comes into play. So I think, it was just one of those days where there was all kinds of factors of why the ball wasn't getting caught, from the shotgun alignment. And I think that, we'll improve on it. And but it's all of us. It's not just Jeff.
Again, I appreciate, and you're supposed to, but I appreciate having your quarterbacks back. And it's been a unified message. And that message needs to turn into, some meaning. Whether he's back there or not, they got to get better quarterback play. If it's Sims or if it's somebody other than Sims due to injury. But I get why you went out there and went after a guy like Sims, because you always think you can do better, right?
And we had a comment in yesterday from Matt that said that Sims is like trying to turn lead into gold. I don't agree with that necessarily, but I like the analogy with the gold. I'm going to go there for a second.
It's looking a lot like lead right now.
I want to dive into this. What Jeff Sims is Jeff Sims is one of those rivers that the miners in 1849 went to looking for gold. That's what Jeff Sims is. Yes, there is gold in Jeff Sims.
We're going Deadwood here.
Yeah, we're going Deadwood, 100%. 100%. There is gold in that river. There is gold in Jeff Sims.
Can I play Al Swearinger?
Sure.
Have you not seen the show?
No.
All right.
No, over my head.
Do yourself some favor.
Yeah, over my head.
And check out some Deadwood clips on YouTube.
Okay, but anyway.
Keep talking. I interrupted.
Back to the analogy here. Jeff Sims is a flowing river that there is gold in. And as of right now, what Nebraska is Nebraska is trying to go into that river, and they're trying to pan for gold and get themselves enough to make a nice gold watch. That's what you want. You want Jeff Sims to be able to take the gold out of it, turn it into a nice gold watch for your offense. But right now, the river is flowing too fast, and you're getting swept away.
I'm a silver or white gold guy.
Okay, Mr. Uppity. Okay. Back to the point again. You're just trying to distract me here. The river is flowing too fast right now. So what I think the task is for the Husker offense is to set up your offense in a way, create some dams in that river, slow down the flow of the water so you can pan for enough gold that you can turn it into a watch. But right now, the river's flowing too fast with the turnovers.
Slow it down.
With the issues you're seeing, you need to slow it down. You need to find a way to get that gold out of the river, because there's enough to make a watch. You can make a lot of money. But you got to find a way to get that gold out of the river first. Right now, Nebraska can't get can't get gold out of that river.
Brennan from the Black Hills says it's like turning water into wine. So if that happens, can we get hammered Saturday? Yeah, there's a lot right now of a drinking town with a football problem mindset going on with Nebraska football. That's funny. That's pretty good. More from Satterfield, and his frustration level real high. But I like the analogy. I like what you painted there. If you can just slow it down, you're gonna make some money.
Well, it's Jeff Sims is the same reason why all those miners went out to California in 1849. You hear about the promise of gold, the hope, what you can do with it. You're going sight unseen, and there is. There's going to be gold out there, and there's gold inside Jeff Sims. You see the arm talent, you see the legs, you see what he can do whenever he has the ball in his hands. The question is that decision making, and that's what's washing you away right now. The decision making is the river being too fast, and you can't get enough gold out of it to turn it into a watch.
I always got just destroyed growing up with Oregon Trail, trying to cross the river. Never ended well.
See, I never packed enough fruit, and I'm getting dysentery or scurvy or whatever.
Sure, right.
Yeah, that was my problem.
And, we could have gone more on the Oregon Trail with buffalo hunting last week, but it didn't work out. More from Sims here when it comes to struggles.
After 2 games, I'm very frustrated, with just the ball security. It kind of just takes hold of everything that you've done. The good, we've done some really, really, really good things offensively, especially running the football, the quarterback run game. Guys are getting better each week, but it's clouded by the turnovers. And so we've got to fight. I don't know if I'm not answering your question, but we have to fight like hell to win the turnover margin and stop doing, we're not giving ourselves a chance to win. Playing great defense, playing great special teams, playing good offense. But when you turn the ball over like that, you have no shot.
Fair point. Rhett chimes in. I hate hearing year one stuff about this coach. $9 million a year isn't year one. Need to produce. I don't know that all Nebraska fans agree with you there. Now, I think you're right, Rhett. Thanks for the comment that you're making a hell of a lot of money to not be 0-2. I totally understand that because you should be 1-1. Could be 2-0. But 0-2 should not be part of the equation based on where things were at. Colorado was winnable for a half. You get any help, you're up 3-0, you're tied 3-3, it's 10-7, whatever the case. But if events go better, and I'll get off Colorado, I know, time to turn the page. But you have some things go your way where you don't screw it up yourself. You have the lead going into halftime, and it's a different ball game. And your defense isn't out there exhausting themselves, and then they can't answer for you at the level they've been when you cut it to 13-7.
And my thing is there's still a lot of season left. There's still 10 games left where if you see improvement, even if it's not a bowl game, would you as a Husker fan be happy if this team goes from turning it over 4 times a game down to 1 or none by the end of the year? And hey, you still can't get over Wisconsin or Iowa, but this team looks a hell of a lot better. They play a lot better. They don't tighten up in the fourth quarter. Could this season still be a success without a bowl game? That's kind of what I've been trying to wrestle with over the past
week or so. I don't think so. I think you can see them get better, and they can put some wins together, right? But I think they still need to find their way to 6.
And that's where I come back to the $9 million a year.
That's the price of doing business for football right now, and I know it's exorbitant. But you can't punt too soon, even though it's been a tough 2 weeks. You can punt. I'm not telling you what to do, but I'm saying I'm not ready to say, man, this ain't going to work yet.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, a ton of great comments to get to. We'll do that here. StreamYard for you, Hail Varsity YouTube channel, 489-1240. Chopper76, love the name. Our defense gives me hope. Hopefully we can keep our DC. He's done a great job. We'll just fix that. Thanks for that. 2 games, tough to be patient. Roulade chimes in. Roulade 575. It's been 2 games. Being patient sucks, but we all knew this would be a slow burn. If we're contending for a conference title in year 3, I think most of us would be happy. And I think Nebraska fans, let's not ignore the positives either. You had Hunter held to 73 yards, no touchdowns. Yeah, that dude is a freak. That dude is a freak who does not like physical contact.
Well, I think about how different the tenor around
if you're
Nebraska
1-1
would be. If you're 0-2, but your second loss is to TCU instead of to Dion, who's also in year 1, if you have a loss to another coach who's not in year 1, I think the tenor just completely changes. What shifted the narrative in college football is now fans from across the country have seen, well, you can do it in one off season. You can go to the transfer portal and you can make it happen. It doesn't have to be a slow fix. We talked all offseason long about the incremental progress that you wanted to see in the first year of Rule, and the hope of that was it's going to be a bowl game. You're going to be good enough. You're going to make enough splashes in the transfer portal and with some freshmen that you're going to be good enough to at least make a bowl game. But then the tenor shifts whenever you see a guy who that wasn't his expectation in year one. Deion Sanders at Colorado. His expectation in year one was to win and to win now. And he brought in some really, really good talent through the transfer portal to go and do that. And he kicked a lot of people off his football team to go and do that. And would that have worked around Nebraska? No, I don't think so. I don't think that's the type of guy Rule is, and I don't think that's how Husker football fans want their program to be run. If you want to have a quick turnaround in year one, there are side effects. There are consequences that come from that. And I'm not sure Husker fans would have been
Deion's the only guy in America that can do what he's done.
I'd say the only.
No, I mean it. I mean, that place in Colorado, there's a lot of places that have.
Well, Mel Tucker did essentially the same in his first year at Michigan State. I know it's not a good week to talk about Mel Tucker.
No, it's not. He flipped it, but he's also. Mel was supposed to be there for the long haul, right? With this flip and the Kenneth Walker acquisition, you go 11-2. But Deion, I don't think Deion's long-term in Boulder.
And that remains to be seen. But I'm just sitting here saying that if you don't lose to Deion in week 2, if you lose to anybody else in the country or anyone that's not a year one head coach, you feel a lot better about being 0-2, but it's because Prime did it in one offseason that you sit back and you go, why hasn't it splashed for us? Why wasn't Rule able to do the same?
Different ways to skin, right?
And it kind of just changed, I think, what a lot of people, their perception of year one is whenever you see another coach doing it in year one. Whenever that was never quite the Rule plan. I'm not defending Rule because I think it should look a lot better than it does right now, especially in the offensive side of the ball. You put all your eggs into one basket with a quarterback that has been shooting you in the foot repeatedly so far this season. So you hope for improvement in that sense. And if it's not Sims getting improved, you hope it's a backup quarterback. But the sky is not falling. And I think that's always how Husker Nation is after a loss, is you're going to overreact and you're going to kind of come back. And there's some Husker fans coming back on the side of Rule after hearing him speak this week, just in terms of, you know what,
it needs to look. It needs to look different, yes. Not self-harm with decision-making and some play calling, or at least the execution part. That's the PTSD part of this as a fan base, is you're like, man, it's not different. You're losing the same way, and you're losing in a boneheaded manner with simple fundamentals. There's fumbles, there's interceptions, there's why are you throwing it. I mean, that's the outcry. Why is it still so painful? Meanwhile, you got a defense that's good enough to hang with anybody in the country, and they're not getting any help. Evan Bland joins us. More of your comments, hour 2 on the way with Hail Varsity.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Thanks for hanging out. Hour 2 with us here on Hail Varsity Radio, presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. More thoughts from Coach Satterfield coming up here at 5:25. What happens with the Nebraska quarterback situation? Does Nebraska get in the win column? We say hi to Evan Bland from the Omaha World Herald at Evan Bland, OWH. Evan, good to spend some time. Thanks for jumping on.
Yeah, guys. How's it going?
It's good. And it's pretty lively in the discussion here in the StreamYard with the listeners giving their takes on things with what should happen at quarterback, the problem with patience, the topic of patience, Rule. I mean, there's still plenty of upheaval and frustration through 2 games. It was good to see out in Boulder and, Nebraska trying to get things figured out. Brett emails in, Chris at HailVarsity.com, just cover. Nebraska's favored by 11, so a 2-touchdown win. But it's pretty fascinating, and Nebraska's not a stranger to quarterback controversy, but I think Nebraska's had steady quarterback play, or at least manageable quarterback play, for a lot of years. I think you got to go back and give David Harris credit with this comment to some of the Tanner Lee, right? The Tanner Lee era, where everything that was thrown was deflected or to the wrong guy, and it was a pick 6. Nebraska's got to get out of their own way, Evan.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, yeah, Tanner Lee, that's an interesting one early in the Taylor Martinez era. Adrian had his moments or his struggles, I suppose, too. But I think what's going on with Jeff Sims in a lot of ways is heightening maybe the frustration of this 0-2 start, because there are components of what Nebraska is doing that are encouraging. The defense has looked pretty good, and I think you can see where that's going as this season moves along and into the future. And there are pieces on offense that you feel like are at least serviceable. I mean, I think the offensive line has taken a step forward from last year. It's maybe not an asset, but it's not a liability, maybe the way it was at times last year. You kind of could look around at some of the pass-catching weapons and see how it could work. We saw what Thomas Fedoni did even with the game, out of hand late. He was able to get that touchdown. So, there are pieces there where you can say, okay, Nebraska can find a path to winning games, but it's been just some of the basic mistakes, taking snaps, throwing flat as opposed to putting some arc on a ball that lead to interceptions, things of that nature. And, Jeff Sims has shown why he's out there. He had that long touchdown run against Colorado. He looked good in that regard with his legs at Minnesota as well. And so you're kind of in this tough spot where, he's sort of your best chance to score points, while at the same time he's been the guy who sort of has given the ball away. And that's really undermined what they've been trying to do in terms of complementary football and winning time of possession and things like that. So it's a tough spot. We'll see if the ankle injury this week, plays a role in that. It sounds like he's practicing this afternoon after sitting out on Tuesday. So we'll see how it plays out. But it does complicate, I think, the perception of how Nebraska's 0-2.
Evan, there's an old saying out there that the backup quarterback's the most popular guy in town a lot of the time. And I think through 2 games, that's very true right now for Husker football. You kind of laid out some of the history. When you go back through the past near decade of Husker football, which backup do you think's been the most popular guy in town, and where does Heinrich Haarberg rank on that list as we stand right now? Because you go back and the names you think of Tristan Jevia, you think of Patrick O'Brien, you think of Andrew Bunch, you think of Noah Vedral, you think of Logan Smothers, Chubba Purdy. The list just goes on and on of how many different guys Husker fans have called for, and for one reason or another, they have seen the field or they haven't seen the field. But where does Heinrich Haarberg, you think, rank on that list based on where Husker fans are at right now?
Yeah, probably somewhere in the middle. It's probably one of the, I think, defining characteristics of the last decade, honestly, is that, some of those names that you mentioned, I suppose fans have clamored for, but really, like Taylor Martinez and Tommy Armstrong, those were pretty clearly the guys. And if there were any criticisms at certain points, it was that there was nobody pushing them. There was no bona fide quarterback competition. So, I go back to, Jamal Lord and people clamoring for Joe Daly back in 2003, or when Daly was in there, people clamoring for Harrison Beck as a 4-star guy in 2005. Those are the ones that kind of come to mind for me. Maybe Zach Lee, in 2009, 2010. That sort of range. But, with Haarberg, I kind of feel like we have a sense of what he is. You think back to the spring and how there was talk about, how his superpower, I think, as Marcus Satterfield said at the time, was being kind of a tough, versatile football player. And I think that's, what he is. And coaches have been pretty upfront about the fact that if they're going to want to get into a lot of passing situations, that's probably more what they would turn to Chubba Purdy for. And with Haarberg, he's caught a pass already this year. He's a tough runner. So I think kind of what his strengths are somewhat well defined. And again, it's maybe not fair to totally put him in a box because we haven't seen him outside of mop-up duty and some spring games. But I don't know that there's a clamoring for him because he's someone who's perceived to lead them, forward and score a bunch of points. But if nothing else, maybe Haarberg can be the guy who takes care of the ball. And, again, I don't know that there's this delusion or perception that he's going to lead a bunch of scoring drives or what have you. But, again, you look at how Nebraska's lost their 2 games, and you take away those mistakes and those turnovers, and I think you can make a pretty compelling argument that the defense and the special teams would do their part, and Nebraska would, at the very least, be 1-1 at this point. So I can kind of see where that's coming from. But again, we'll see how the injury plays into it with Sims and whether that affects his availability on Saturday.
Sam Keller, Joe Gans, to finish that thought on the backup quarterback being one of the most popular.
There's so many names, because we didn't even talk Riker Fife. We didn't even talk Luke McCaffrey. There's been just so many names through the past 10 to 15 years.
Guy.
Yeah,
right. I mean, you've been through the ringer as a Nebraska fan here. So the defense is fantastic. They've looked good. They wilted and gave up a lot of big plays in the second half, but that's going to happen. I think they get a bit of a pass because of what the offense hasn't been. And I know, Evan, you were there with Satterfield. What do you make of his response today to some great questions just about the offensive rhythm, the quarterback, and I know he deferred some of it to Coach Rule, but just overall, what do you believe about his system and what he wants to do when it matches up with the personnel? Do you think he'll continue to mold, or is it going to be a situation where there's sympathy cards sent by South Carolina fans to Nebraska fans this year?
Well, yeah. I mean, it was an interesting 10 minutes or so with Coach Sat today. I mean, he didn't really mince words. He said, "Yeah, it sucks right now. It's not fun. It hasn't been fun these last 3 days trying to figure things out." I thought the thing that stood out the most about what he said was he was asked kind of what staples of the offense have they been able to establish that they can lean on, whether that's the running game or what have you. And he didn't even want to go there. He's like, yeah, through 2 games, the ball security stuff is totally undermined and put a cloud over any of the positives that they've done. And so, I think they have had some positives. I mentioned the offensive line, and he said today that he thought the line was the most consistent group in that offense. Again, we saw Thomas Fidone make his first career catch. As he moves forward, they have some options in the passing game. But anything that they do, again, it just doesn't matter if you're giving up the ball and you're coughing up scoring opportunities. And so I think they're looking for some more playmakers, assuming that they can get the ball security stuff under control. He mentioned how in his career he has at times been around offenses where the snaps at receiver are dominated by like 3 guys, which is kind of the case with Nebraska right now. He said, yeah, it's not ideal. That's still something they're working through as they bring their freshmen along. I think Jalen Lloyd and Malachi Coleman would be those guys, to step in as maybe the next men up if called upon. But it's just kind of a tough spot right now. I mean, you're limited at some skill positions. Your quarterback hasn't been able to hold on to the ball, and he repeated again today that it's not just Jeff Sims, but it's how to prepare him for crowd noise. It's how to keep things in a rhythm, things like that. But there's definite frustration that they feel like there have been some good things, but again, what does it matter if you're not able to finish drives because you can't hang on to the ball?
It's Evan Bland with us here from the Omaha World-Herald talking Nebraska's offense. Jeff Sims on Hail Varsity Radio. And Evan, I think one of the positive points that might get brushed under the rug a little bit has been Nebraska's rushing attack so far this year. I do think you've seen positives from Gabe Irvin and from that offensive line. It hasn't been perfect, but I do think there's been a noted improvement from there last year. What do you want to see this weekend against Northern Illinois from that rushing attack in terms of taking some pressure off of Jeff Sims, taking some pressure off the offense as a whole, being able to go out there and overpower a team that you would think you'd be able to physically impose your will upon?
Yeah, it feels like a group that might be taking center stage on Saturday night. Even if Jeff Sims goes, you got to figure he's probably not 100% or won't be with that ankle, having not practiced Tuesday and stepping back in today. So, he'll probably do some draws or some running, but this figures to be a game where you do lean more on Gabe Irvin. And to me, it feels like a game where maybe you get Ramir Johnson involved a little bit with a screen pass or a reverse or something like that. You can get him popping. And Satterfield said today Anthony Grant, too, absolutely would be back in the mix after he didn't get on the field against Colorado. So they have some weapons there. It'll be an interesting test because Northern Illinois, for some of their struggles, they have one of the better defensive lines that you're going to see certainly at the Group of 5 level, and maybe right in there with some that they'll see even in Big Ten play. So it's a challenging week where I think Nebraska wants to run. That's where their strength is at this point. That's probably their roadmap to winning games. And so can they do it against, again, a pretty decent front group that Northern Illinois is going to put out there? It seems like Gabe Ervin has certainly taken hold of that number one running back spot based on his usage at Colorado. But I just don't know, again, what other path there is to sustainable victory for Nebraska. I think it's got to start with the run and that offensive line giving them holes to run through.
Evan Bland with us, Omaha World Herald at Evan Bland, OWH on Twitter. So what do you believe about the backups behind Sibbs? What would you be confident in about Harburg? What are you confident in about Priddy?
Well, I think Priddy is getting back up to health based on what we've heard from the last couple of days. Sounded like he had maybe a groin tweak almost 2 weeks ago. So his appearance at Colorado was a little bit more on an emergency basis, I think, because Harburg's helmet came off. So he's probably the guy if you're looking more of a pass-heavy approach. It seems like because of injury and skill set, he might be that third guy right now. So it does put an opportunity out there for Harburg to show what he can do, and I think it's pretty clear they like his ability to run. They like how tough he is with that, his versatility. We saw a little bit of what he could do as a passer. I know the coaching staff was impressed by how he hung in the pocket and delivered a few balls under pressure and took the hit in order to let the play out a little bit more and for the receiver to get open. So they feel confident, as they've said, about either of those two running the offense. I do think their skill sets are a little bit different from Jeff Sims, if in no other way than Sims is probably a more dynamic overall athlete and certainly has more college football experience than the other two. But, I think as we've seen from the defense, which has played so many guys, and some surprises have popped up maybe just based on who's risen up in the game, I think this is an opportunity, if it is Harburg, to go in and show what he can do. Because, again, we've heard in practice, we've seen little bits and pieces here and there from the spring game and things. But, who knows? He could step in there and really impress and show what he can do, too. So if it comes to that, I think that would add to the intrigue of the Matt Rule home debut on Saturday night.
Evan, about 90 seconds, little less. Drama Saturday night, or does Nebraska get it handled no matter what's at quarterback?
I mean, I think Nebraska wins, but I don't think they win going away. This feels, honestly, Northern Illinois, in a lot of ways, is going through what Nebraska is going through, which is a pretty strong defensive start, quarterback who's not been the best of game managers, struggled to score. So this feels to me like a game where, first to 20, maybe 22 or 23 wins. And again, when you look at Nebraska and its path to making a bowl game, I think some of these swing games are probably going to come down to whether the defense can get a takeaway and set up the offense on a short field. So I don't think it's going to be a comfortable victory for Nebraska on Saturday night, but I do think the defense will do enough, and maybe they'll even help set up the offense with a timely takeaway.
So there's your charge. Defense, you've been doing it all. Do even more. Score for us. Right?
Score, give them a short field, do whatever you can. I think it's going to be a rough go, and again, Northern Illinois in some ways is sort of what Nebraska is. So I would expect a low-scoring game, but yeah, I think Nebraska ultimately pulls it out.
Evan Bland with us from the Omaha World Herald. Evan, we'll see you Saturday night. Thanks for a few minutes.
Thanks, guys.
All right, more of your comments in the stream. You guys are on fire today in a great way. We'll get to those comments. We'll also hear from Satterfield. More on that frustration. Hail Varsity continues.
Hail Varsity Radio is live. Now, back to Schmitty.
Schmitty's a great guy, but he don't have a brain.
And Elijah.
You want me to speak? When I point at you, yeah.
On Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, Hail Varsity. Open phones here till 5:40. Jock Doc on the way, 489-1240. Plenty to get into with your StreamYard comments. We will get through them. Roger says, really enjoy Evan Bland on the show. Roger, thanks for the email. We have more comments. You have David chiming in. And David says, not easy being quarterback in Nebraska. The microscope magnified 1,000 times. The pressure is huge. Don't doubt that. Don't doubt that at all with what Sims is going through. You have more comments. And let's get to, here we go. Chase chimes in. If Sims plays Saturday and has a turnover, will Rule change quarterbacks so the mob doesn't start harming? Is that what he's trying to say? Harming the team rather than helping out at home?
Do you have a glare on your computer screen? Is that what's going on?
I need glasses, apparently.
See, that's it. He even has mostly proper. No, he doesn't have any punctuation in here. You struggle with that a little bit. No offense. That's not most people do.
Yes. Yeah. I'm trying to read on the fly here. And her dizzle is like, look, it's not even the yips with Sims. Plenty of evidence to show who he is.
And I agree with that. I agree with that.
No, you've got too much history.
And one of the things I've said yesterday and again today when I made that analogy of the river is there does come...
That glorious analogy.
It was pretty good.
No, I loved it. I thought it was good.
It wasn't my best. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's the best analogy I've ever made on this show. But good. I thought given the circumstances...
It's mining for gold.
It was solid. I think one of the things that will tell the story with Marcus Satterfield in how he's doing with this offense is how well he's able to take some of the pressure off of Sims by how you adjust your game plan. You didn't think that Sims, according to what Satterfield has said, you didn't think based on what you saw in fall camp that the turnovers were going to continue to be this big of an issue through the first two games. Well, guess what? They have been. Now it's your job as a coach. If you still think that's the guy that gives you the best chance to win, how do you go eliminate some of those mistakes from a game plan point of view? How do you go out there and take the pressure off?
Some of it's not even game plan, though. That's the thing. Okay, Rule took the arrows for crowd noise. Brother, you've played in the ACC. And I know Boulder was nuts, and I know it's 53,000 of your closest enemies. But at this point, with that crew, center, quarterback, should you have snap problems? I mean, and it's not like they were surprise snaps. Yes, the motion, the deflection was bad. But the drop...
The two drops,
the two fumbles, that's trying to get going where you're going before you secure the ball. Mm-hmm. That's being antsy. That's being able to handle the moment. That's the question. Is this a moment thing where he's too jumpy? And if that's it, I don't know that that's fixable.
If that's it.
If that's it, I don't know if that's fixable. You either can handle the moment or you can't. You got to keep trying. I understand that part of it, but you got to find a way to settle him down. And listen, we don't know. There's been a lot of criticism on Satterfield. I get it because his track record wasn't great for some of us who've watched college football at South Carolina. And this is a new and different beast. I think we don't know how good or bad or ugly his play calling or game design is because he's had stupid, careless, mindless turnovers. It's not fair to hammer him other than, well, he's the guy who wanted Sims. I get it. And if you can fix him, God, it could be fun for Nebraska offensively. You're limited. You're absolutely limited with what you can do, but there's enough there to go win. There's enough there to go win some tight ball games with the defense you got. I get why you roll the dice, but you need an insurance policy, and you got to use that insurance policy at some point if the moment is too big.
Well, and that's kind of what I've been saying in that I think it's too early for this to be an indictment on Satterfield just yet. You can say what you will about Sims. I think Satterfield has an opportunity knowing what the issues are with Sims. Sims has his issues as a quarterback. He's turnover prone. We know that. That's been proven at Georgia Tech. That's been proven through the first two games. What are you going to do now to try to take some of that pressure off? And if you can't change it through these next two games, this is the argument for having Sims tried out there against Northern Illinois. Mm-hmm. You have two great opportunities against two teams from a talent point of view, from what you have brought in. And I don't want to go recruiting rankings, but I'm going to go there. From what you have brought in, the resources that you have, you out-talent these next two teams on your roster. What can you do? from an offensive point of view to limit those turnovers from Sims against an inferior opponent. If they continue, that's whenever you go, okay, now Haarberg's the guy. But you do have an opportunity to change up how your offense is going to look moving forward, trying to take some of that pressure off of Sims, trying to not put him in positions where he's going to turn the football over. And if you make some adjustments and the same problems continue, that's whenever you go, okay, it's time for Haarberg. But this is an opportunity for Satterfield. It's an opportunity for Sims. That's what I think the argument comes down to for keeping Sims in as your starting quarterback against Northern Illinois, to say, hey, the first two, they didn't go how we wanted it to. Those are some tough opponents. We have some easier opponents coming up, winnable football games. I hate saying that, but I'm going to. Winnable football games coming up. How are you as an offense going to adjust to try to limit what Sims is doing from a turnover point of view? And then what are you, Jeff Sims, going to do to turn this story on its head? You're in front of the home crowd here.
They want you to do well.
They want you to do well, but they're nervous you're not going to. If things start going poorly, they're going to turn on you quickly, but they're going to root for you up until that point.
Sure. Win or tie, as they say. Got your back, win or tie, as long as you don't lose. And listen, Nebraska and Sims and Satterfield, it's fascinating to watch. You got to let them work through it. And it's been too soon to punt. Now, if he's not healthy, let's see Haarberg and build a game plan around him. Have we done the struggles and frustration yet?
Yes, we have.
Okay. Cut 5. Do you regret the game plan and the decision-making with what you've put into these first 2 weeks?
No, I don't have any second guessing about any of my calls on third down. There was a couple early that, going into it, Coach and I discussed just, hey, we're backed up a little bit. Let's be smart. Let's get it complete. As coach, you'll hear him say, like, let's get the ball and play and see if we can catch and run. So other than that, I'm good with all the calls that I had on third down.
So he's not second guessing. You can't rear view mirror it. I understand. Comment in the stream also touches on Lloyd and Malachi. Get them in the next 2 weeks. Give them something on the menu that they can eat, and find a way to get them the football so they can at least get their feet wet, Elijah, for Michigan. Because they're talented kids. They would help the offense, presuming you get serviceable quarterback play. Man, it's such a thing to watch guys that are ballyhooed and have all sorts of athleticism and have shown it, but not have consistency. And you're seeing that at quarterback. Last part here on the turnover topic, have they been surprising? Have they been an ongoing thing?
No, it was it's really just popped up in the last 2 weeks to where, it's been to this magnitude. And just kind of really came to a head last week, But again, it's easy to say, Jeff, it was all Jeff's fault. Like, there's all kinds of factors in those, why he wasn't able to catch all those balls from under center with the motions and the snap timing and the, having to go on the silent count and get the motion back there. So, we've really worked at it. I hate to be reactionary. That sucks when you have to come in and be reactionary, but, I think that we're off to a good start of making sure we remedy that.
You have a comment from Ken. Yeah, Coleman and Lloyd have been in, but they don't have any catches.
Lloyd's got the one ender on. He's got the handoff.
The reverse, right. So good, you got him going, but you need to get them involved. They need a couple, 3 catches. On top of what you've been getting to Kemp, on top of getting Fedoni going, you got to see I want to see Grant. You want to talk about Anthony Grant on the bench in Boulder? And a guy that just was probably inching to get in to kind of right the wrong of the turnover. There's no way they're pointing to him on the bench after 2 fumbled snaps. There's no way they're turning to him.
Well, we talk about the lack of pass catching options, how the freshmen need to stand up. How beneficial would it be to the passing game? And this is actually a legitimate question here. How beneficial would it be to the passing game if Ramir Johnson is a guy that you can flex out in the slot and use in the passing game more than as your RB2? If you can build up that trust in Grant, and now you're not breaking down Ramir Johnson as the game goes on, because running between the tackles, that's what Nebraska wants to do. That's not Ramir Johnson's strong suit necessarily.
He's a tough runner, but he's a tough runner. Limited.
He'll willingly do it, but it's not what you want him doing. You want to get him, as I said yesterday, you want to get him with the ball in space.
Some option outside like he did to get that big run against the Buffs. The other thing I want to see from Ramir, the routes you've seen from him have been intermediate, right? There's been a drop and then there's been a catch, but a gain of 5. Get him on a linebacker on a wheel route. get him getting vertical with that speed. Got to be able to complete it. But I think that's a matchup. Get him doing a drag route. I mean, there's 100 things you can do with him. You're right. Get him to catch the football because he's a hell of a third down guy. And more option. Whoever's at quarterback, let's see some more option. I know I'm going throwback, but let's see some zone read. Let's see some option. Then let's see some play action off of both.
And I think it's funny here that we're going through, this is more wants than needs, Schmidt. Well, some of the things we've just laid out with getting the freshman receivers on the field. I think the end goal for what Matt Rule and Marcus Satterfield want from the offense at Nebraska is an offense that doesn't need to throw the ball to go beat Northern Illinois. You're going to need to throw the football against the likes of Minnesota and against Colorado. Balance. But in the long run at Nebraska, what development would be having an offense that you don't need to go chuck the ball around the yard to go beat Northern Illinois. You don't need to go take the top off the defense because you're picking up a consistent 3-4 yards running the ball on first down. You're picking up a consistent 3-4-5 yards on second down running the football. And then by the time the second half rolls around, those 3 and 4 yards are turning into 8 and 9 yards, and those 7 and 8 yards are turning into 15 and 20 yard runs. That's what the end goal is. That's what they want their offense to be at Nebraska. Now, are you there yet? No. And does it make it a hell of a lot harder whenever you are turning the football over, whenever that is what you want your offense to be? Yes, it makes it a hell of a lot harder. So the first steps in development are not getting guys like Malachi Coleman and Jalen Lloyd on the field, as nice of a boost they would be to your offense. The first step is protecting the football and having a rushing attack that against the likes of Northern Illinois and Louisiana Tech, you can run the football even whenever they know you're going to run the football, kind of like we saw in the second half against North Dakota last year.
Well, it's as simple as throwing the ball to set up the run, and Nebraska's O-line, while better, can't just line up against a loaded box and get 2nd and 5 every first down run.
Especially whenever you're playing teams like Minnesota and Iowa and Wisconsin and Michigan.
So you got to have some semblance of a passing attack. Jock Doc's on the way. The latest on Aaron Rodgers. More Nebraska football thoughts as we're rolling through a Wednesday. Tomorrow we are live at the Single Barrel. Awesome steakhouse. All sorts of whiskeys for you inside the Graduate 4 to 6 tomorrow.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by Currency. Time for a Jock Doc Wednesday. We say hi to Dr. Brandon Seifert. As Aaron Rodgers on the mind of many. There's a lot of pop-up Jets fans. There's a lot of old-school Jets fans that still have tears in their beer. Dr. Brandon, just a real cruel injury that you see from aging superstars, be it Marino or Charles Barkley. Now you have Aaron Rodgers to the list of blown-out Achilles.
Yeah, just brutal. You watch that video, it's pretty clear-cut what happened there. You know, we've talked about a few of these on the show before. So if we think about, what is an Achilles tendon tear, Achilles anatomically is basically if you kind of feel along the calf muscles in the back, follow your calf muscles down to your heel, there's kind of that thick cord that's right there. That's basically called the Achilles tendon, and that's essentially what he ruptured. Most of the time when these things rupture, it's maybe 1 or 2 inches above where the tendon hooks into the heel part of it. Obviously a devastating injury, long recovery, and again, you start to worry about what kind of effectiveness will you have after you come back after a big procedure or a treatment of one of these.
Let's talk about the procedure and treatment. How do you guys go fix the athlete that suffers from this?
Yeah, so with the Achilles rupture, it's kind of interesting. The treatment for these really has kind of changed, especially for the general public. I would tell you, even just 10, 15 years ago was predominantly you have to have these fixed surgically. There's been a couple of recent research papers that have come out in the last several years that show some studies showing equivalent results with surgical versus non-surgical treatment of Achilles tendon ruptures. When you look at, what's the re-rupture risk, when you look at what the kind of long-term is under appropriate tension, and then when you look at, does their muscle ever quite regain all the function and strength back? And so kind of interesting looking at some of that data, and so that's a discussion we typically have with our patients about you can treat these non-operatively. What's kind of missing from that data is how you approach these and your really high-level athletes, your NFL players, professional athletes, collegiate athletes. How do you approach these in that subset of patients? We don't really have clear-cut data on that. I would say predominantly at the higher level realm, your high school athletes, your collegiate athletes, special athletes, most of those are still getting fixed surgically, if not all of them, would be kind of the standard of care, at least at this point, at that level. It'll be interesting to see if that ever changes for that level.
It's Dr. Brandon Seifert with us here at Jock Doc Wednesday on Hail Varsity Radio. And Dr. Brandon, from Aaron Rodgers' perspective, what we know about him, are there any alternative methods to fixing this Achilles tendon? Maybe some ayahuasca, maybe a darkness retreat, anything he can do there?
Jeez.
In Boulder, those things probably work pretty well. But interesting. There are some. A lot of this involves essentially, sewing the tendon back together. So how you get there, I would say that's where kind of some of these newer techniques are coming into play. There's obviously the traditional, incision on the back of the leg, putting in, thick sutures to sew that together. That's kind of been the classically described procedure for this. But there's some other new ones out there. There's some we call minimally invasive procedures where there's just a couple of small, tiny incisions that are being performed. I would say this isn't really an area where a lot of cadaver grafts have really taken hold, at least not for an initial Achilles tendon injury you're fixing, especially if it's pretty acute. We're typically not using cadaver grafts. But some of the different suturing technology, fixation technology, those types of things definitely are changing some. But it's still traditionally, some type of suture being placed across the tendon defect to bring it back together under good tension is that classic repair. What I will say has changed drastically is really more on the rehab side, as we've looked more at treating these, non-operatively and how aggressive you can be. I would tell you the weight-bearing after program has really kind of increased in terms of when can we do that. Oftentimes we'll have folks now weight-bearing somewhere between 2 to 4 weeks is a possibility, especially if it's a pretty acute tear, easy to put back together. Definitely doing more range of motion earlier on than we were before. And then as we've talked about before, thinking about trying to add some kind of biologics to it, some type of, tendon growth, some kind of tendon stimulator of sorts. That's also some of the newer technology that's out there, utilizing PRP, which we've talked about before here. Is there maybe an opportunity to put some stem cells? Those kinds of things are also kind of new potential things that we're utilizing.
Dr. Brandon, does this rehab process change at all based on the age of Aaron Rodgers? He's on the upper side of 30, damn near 40 years old.
39, Elijah.
And I just want to get your take on whether or not the procedure and the rehab process changes based on somebody who's, say, 21, 22 years old, a college athlete, and someone like Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, it's a really great question. So really it boils down to kind of that tendon quality. If you have somebody who has kind of really poor kind of tendon quality, tendon tissue around that area, then you're probably going to think about maybe slowing down their rehab. You might alter that some, but if he still has, just great healthy tissue, no, I don't think you'd really change much of his rehab compared to, say somebody younger in their 20s, even high schooler type. One thing that could also, though, alter the post-op rehab would be the type of tear someone has. Again, if there's really nice kind of thick ends of that tendon to bring back together, you can be pretty aggressive with those in terms of rehab. Sometimes you'll have those tears where, for lack of a better description, it's kind of like a bomb went off in there, and there's really not a lot of great tissue to sew back together. So it's a little more of a tenuous repair. You just want to kind of bring those two ends back together to touch, and then you really need to be a little bit more careful with those in terms of the kind of recovery and weight bearing afterwards.
Dr. Brandon, it didn't sound like Aaron Rodgers is ready to retire. That's the word from Coach Sala with the Jets. So let's talk real quick about the road ahead for Rodgers and what could he be if and when he makes a return.
Yeah, that's always the big question with these. So you take a guy, and if you're more of that kind of drop back passer type, I think he'll be fine. I still think he'll have pretty good power there. If you take somebody who's more of a scrambler, doing more running and throwing type routes, then he's probably going to struggle a little bit more. But you do see, obviously, in the NBA, you have players coming back that go back and play after an Achilles tendon. They're a little bit different, but they can still play pretty darn well. And so I don't think this will have a huge impact for him as long as he rehabs it well, doesn't have any big setbacks along the way, and again really has hopefully fairly high quality tissue to put back together. I think he's got a pretty high ceiling here to return back and do well.
Dr. Brandon, is there, in your mind, from a biomechanical point of view, a difference between a left Achilles and a right Achilles for a quarterback? This is a left Achilles for Rodgers, so it's not the one he's pushing off of, but it is the one he's transferring his weight onto.
Really, yeah.
Is there a difference between the right and the left for that position?
It's a great question. I've always wondered that. No one has really studied that. It is interesting to think about that for a drop-back passer, and even for a pitcher as well. If this is your push-off leg, and especially if this is your, if you're a quarterback, your drop-back passer, and that's that back foot that you're planting and then transitioning forward, you really wonder how much of an impact does that have on quarterbacks at that level and with as quick as you need to be, fast you need to be to do that. I don't have a great answer to that. I think it would impact it some. The question would be, does it impact it enough where you would see a difference in their performance, or more importantly, I guess, how they feel in terms of how quick they can kind of snap the ball and plant that foot? It'd be a good study to do.
Dr. Brandon Seifert, Nebraska Orthopedic Center at Jock Doc Wednesday. Aaron Rodgers, our topic. Dr. Brandon, will get caught up again. Thanks for your insight on this.
Sounds great, Chris. You guys take care.
Good stuff from Dr. Brandon Seifert, Nebraska Orthopedic Center. Podcast, make sure you subscribe. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play with Hail Varsity. Also the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Segments you want or the entire show will wind down on Wednesday next.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. Hail Varsity, presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, podcast, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, and the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Check all of that out. Take us with at your convenience. Do so, as always, when it works for you. Full show or the segment you want to hear. So, a couple of things to wind the show down with. One, we are inside the single barrel tomorrow, quarter of 9th and P. Your friends inside the Graduate, the single barrel, incredible steaks, chops, whiskeys. And we're there Thursdays for home football week. So come see us. We'll be there Saturday for pregame as well, 3 to 5. Excited for that. So be sure to check us out and make sure you frequent your friends at the Single Barrel. Just incredible when it comes to their chops, their baked potatoes. Again, I'm going to say whiskeys, Elijah, because you and I both are like, whiskey sounds all right, and just great weather. Reminder to get buckled up. Use your seatbelt. It saves lives. It prevents injuries only if properly worn. Buckle up. A message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. On the show tomorrow, Gary Barnett will join us. Thoughts on Nebraska CU and Nebraska the rest of the year. Specifically at quarterback, we'll have the word from Rule on Jeff Sims. What he looked like at practice this afternoon. And moving forward, so Coach Rule, an update from him. Jabba Chamberlain going to talk some MLB with us. And I'm sure Jabba's got a Husker football take or two. He's been a big Red fan for a long time. And from Counter Read, Brandon Vogel. Vogues will join us. So a loaded show on Thursday. Want to see you down at the Single Barrel on Thursday, 4 to 6. Want to see you at the Single Barrel, 3 to 5 on Saturday. Are you grilling tonight, or what are you doing?
To be determined.
Yeah?
I don't know. They have these new, I'm not sure how new they are, but it says in the packaging new. Double cheddar hot dogs. They're like,
ooh,
hot dogs, but
you're still going to go nacho cheese on
No.
it.
Different kind of cheese.
Too much cheese?
Mac and cheese.
Ah, you're going to do hot dogs and mac and cheese.
I'm thinking, if I got the mac, which I do, I know I do. I got the hot dogs. The package has already been opened.
Okay.
Is it high class? No. Is it high quality?
No, but it's high awesome.
Yeah, that's the thing, is I'm going to enjoy the hell out of it. So
I grilled last night.
I did as well. I did. I went with the pan-seared steak.
Oh, you did? You get your
the cast iron.
Yeah, I did your cast iron.
I have a ceramic encoded cast iron made by La Creuset.
See, you got to go with the Lodge cast iron.
Well, see, and I have like the original cast irons, but this I got the secret down for the La Creuset, the pan-seared steak. I've been doing it perfect. Yeah.
You put it in the oven afterwards?
No. Nice
grill?
Medium high.
Okay.
A little oil in the pan.
Okay.
You let it sear 90 seconds. Just let it go.
Big.
Make sure that oil is smoking in the pan. Let it sear. What I found out, new information to me, a pan-seared steak. If you want the perfect sear, next 45 to 60 seconds, just take that steak and slowly move it around the pan.
Yeah. That's what the professionals
don't look at it. Just slowly move it around the pan. You got to flip it over, and it's going to have that perfect sear. And then you do the same on the other side. then a little bit of a butter baste up on top to make sure you finish the cooking process, and that thing came out a perfect medium rare. It was lovely last night.
I went medium rare. I did about 1.5 pounds T-bone. It was glorious. I didn't post any pictures. I'm tempted to, but that may annoy some. But next time I will. But yeah, I didn't have to share with anybody last night. It was me and the pups. It was good. Back at 4. Again, single barrel tomorrow. See you there on Hail Varsity.